Welcome to the Clash Co podcast. I'm Cole Cruz.
Brianna Marshall.
Ashley Brown.
And I'm Wyatt Garland. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about anime.
And analyze it and punch things with our mouth.
Today's topic...
Our formative anime.
Yeah, we figured we'd go pretty basic with this one.
Yeah. So, also, we picked up, I think, a handful of new subscribers.
Yeah.
So we wanted to
Welcome,
kind of go through and introduce ourselves again. Obviously, this is the channel of Clash KO, where we talk about and analyze anime and punch things with our mouth.
Yeah, punching is a core.
Yeah, we're like a meathead fusion kind of anime group. We like to discuss things. We're not clean. We're not
Oh yeah, lots of scratchy, sketchy.
Yeah.
If we were manga artists, we'd be Attack on Titan.
Yeah, but we love anime and manga, and so hopefully you guys don't mind the mess as we trudge our way through.
Yeah, we're gonna bleed a little bit.
So what we're gonna do today is we're each gonna talk about kind of some of our formative anime, kind of what goes into our identity as an anime or manga fan.
Mm-hmm.
And Wyatt, do you want to start us out with your first?
Oh yeah. I think this is a lot of people's first, personally. It's this is something that I found kind of once I had already established myself as someone who likes anime, and I was looking through some old school stuff and be like, okay, now what is my flavor? You know, I had kind of already gotten my hands on what I wanted to see. And I never watched the whole series, but specifically the Fist of the North Star movie.
The animated one.
The animated movie is, oh my god, it's just, it's so specifically gargantuan.
Gargantuan's a good word for it.
Its masculinity, which is over the top.
But that's the thing. We're talking about formative. When did you watch it? When you were 14, 15?
No, it was funny. I watched it a little bit later on, but I remember it was kind of the period point for me. I was and then this, because it was. Then there was. Exactly. For me, it was I'd already sort of established who I was. I was I like shonen. I like martial arts. I like a lot of that. I like the solo
wasteland aesthetic.
Yeah, very Road Warrior, and then I was researching and I found that, downloaded it, probably watched it on my computer freshman year of college or something, I don't know. And it was just, I remember seeing it and be no, I know this is perfect. Of course.
I mean, the perfect scene, I'm sure everybody who's ever seen it will never forget, is it starts out and it's got the music going, and you just see footsteps, and it's some kind of mud monster.
Oh my God.
And there are just buildings, skyscrapers, not buildings, skyscrapers falling. And he just walks through one as it falls. No movement of the body, just upper torso,
flinching.
just crumbles through a falling skyscraper on top of him.
And they did a death battle on Screw Attack, actually.
They did too. He won, right?
Oh,
I can't
course.
imagine. He beat Jotaro.
Oh yeah, someone who can stop time. He's just a monster, and it was literally because of that stat. It's because he just couldn't kill him. He can't just he's a monster, and I mean the stoicism of him is obviously comical, but also that movie specifically had a really great buddy archetype. You know?
They throw Kei in with him, who does Kenshiro's whole thing is he punches people and they explode from the inside. And then they have Ray, who does the complete opposite, destroys everybody from the outside with these laser cuts.
And they did this beautiful effect in the movie where they just they actually just scissored the person and split the screen and stuff. And it's a lot
perfectly
of that.
Straight cuts.
Very fun stuff, and the flashing backgrounds while people exploded, really stylizing and sort of just turning up that violence. I mean, it definitely was bragging.
It is the hyper violence, but it feels so old that it's really interesting to be oh, this is an accepted part of anime, and this is something I have found under the stone.
It's a touchstone, and once you realize its effect on basically every other anime ever, I mean, it's substantial.
As far as anime movies based on a series too, it's probably one of the best ones that got it all in one cohesive movie.
You know what's good about it is because it has a really sort of abstract ending as far as the concept.
He's very Mad Max in that sense. It's you got a vignette of what's going on in this world. There are larger things at work.
And I went in and I read the manga, and I've read it since then. It's got some good part. They definitely push the whole rivalry a little bit better in the manga and stuff like that. But I understand the movie cut corners for hierarchy and stuff.
It feels like a functioning movie.
Jackie was done well and all sorts of things like that. So what are you guys' interpretations? Because it's a very masculine movie, or at least it's not making any attempt to do anything else.
I mean,
that's just kind of like, I'm just not massively into those kind of things. So it just didn't really pull me. So I saw like 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Like,
oh no! If you don't get off on him crushing 2 pillars of Buddha with his hands, then you're not gonna like the movie.
I would just say it was just like a bit too much. I remember like when you recommended the movie, I was like, oh, this is cool. It's on YouTube. I'll watch it. And it was just like guts flying on the screen and then just like high-pitched screen and just flashing. I'm just like, going to another movie immediately. This is not for me.
Yeah, I know it has a certain flavor. I understand.
What about you, Ashley?
I mean, as a running theme that will continue throughout this channel, it'll forever and always be Naruto.
I don't know if I'm doing the sign right.
It was
That's fair.
close enough.
Yes.
I mean, it
There
was
were 12 signs and they refer to the...
Oh my god, get your
There it
genjutsu right.
it's the first anime I ever actually watched. It's the first time that I saw anything Japanese. I mean, outside of like when I was a kid and I saw like as a child seeing things on Cartoon Network or anything
Gotcha. But
any of that
like, so like
stuff.
it's like the first years you like committed to like
yeah, I was like, okay,
getting the whole thing.
I'm gonna watch this, and then I saw like some random scene from Shippuden, and I was like, what is this? And I was so confused. I was like, I'm gonna go back and watch and see what the heck this is, and then instantly fell in love, and I just kind of trudged through it and was like, oh, I'm actually like 100% in love with this show, and this is what everyone has talked about my whole life when it comes to anime. And I was like, got it. And it's just the characterization, the art, the emotional ties. It's just everything that I wanted in any anime I've watched since, and just plopped into one thing.
That's fair because like it's interesting that like you have the quintessential like 2010 era like
it's
just anime. It's like everything like that we have success wise like after Naruto is because of Naruto.
Yeah.
Like,
it's definitely, and I mean that's the thing. People argue that the other Titan in that time period, and even now, is still One Piece, but One Piece is still its own thing so much that Naruto is a better vignette of the actual how things actually happen.
Yeah.
Like Naruto is long, but it's not like unworldly like
Yeah.
so it's a different concept.
especially if you're an American, you miss most of the filler, right?
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I skipped over the majority of the filler, like, until I got, like, invested in Shippuden. That's when I, like, really, loved the filler.
Who did it for you? What was the character specifically? Because for me, watching it, if I always felt like, well, I mean, it's a lot of Naruto, like, at the start, obviously, because he's the main character. I mean, did you, like, immediately identify with him, or?
No, actually, when I was watching it, I had been introduced, like, you get introduced fairly quickly to all of the side characters.
Except Tenten.
Except Tenten. I mean, you never really get introduced. There's one filler arc of her, and that's it.
I'm sorry, I just always buzz the shit out of me.
But but with who I mainly gravitated towards, because everyone's like, oh, Sasuke, Naruto, maybe Sakura if you're trash. But it was always Shikamaru for me.
Yeah.
Shikamaru
Gotcha.
was my number one. I have his name tattooed on my body. Like, it was, he just his attitude towards everything, because everyone was like, oh my god, we're in the middle of a war, everything's really high, stress-wise, and he was just like, this is a drag. Like, everything just sucks. And I'll do it if I have to, and I'm the best one out of all of you right now, and but here I am. And I was like, I relate to this so hard.
No, that's really interesting, because I know I ended up watching a lot of the Naruto anime before I went through and read it all.
Yeah.
And one of the things they do in the anime really, really just interestingly and well is they take all of the side characters and like, because time is so dilated out, like the Sasuke retrieval arc, which Shikamaru is the leader for, and so he's in it the most. Like in the anime, it's like it's a whole like year's worth of like content, like. So it makes like these side characters feel like a lot more real in the anime than they even feel in the manga, I would say.
There's a lot of room for fleshing out. It's definitely not one of those animes where they're just getting through and touching base. They were definitely expanding.
Yeah.
And it's so funny.
A lot of love and care like went into
which is what I like
some of that gap,
from
especially
anything that I recognized previously, like let's say like Sailor Moon from when I was a kid, or Pokemon, arguably. You've got
I will fight you. I will
you've
fight
got
you.
this one character that you focus on, and you get a little bit of side characters of the others other sailors. You get a little bit of side characters in Pokemon, but it's all about Ash. It's all about Sailor Moon,
Right,
you know.
right.
And with Naruto, like, yes, it is a lot of filler, but you truly get to fall in love with side characters to where it's like, I really don't even care about Naruto all that
You
much.
understand
don't
more as
feel-
characters instead of just side characters.
You don't feel betrayed if you're like, well, I'm here for that person, and they're getting
Yeah.
enough. So I get it. And it's interesting that you picked that character because he actually, now that I'm thinking about it, he actually is. It's a very Japanese archetype, that genius. You know, like
Yeah.
if it was
Yeah,
if it was a school classroom, he'd be the one with the glasses and the bowl cut, and like, oh, I never miss a question, like.
Literally.
But
yes.
this is sort of a lazy version of that.
Which I think
Yes.
really speaks to like
It's a very interesting.
our time
archetype.
period as
Yeah.
like millennials too. Like I feel like it was also like a character that was like, oh, here's this like quiet genius who's like trying to find like, it's not that he doesn't have the skill or the ability. He's just really trying to say like, where do I fit in this world? And I think that speaks to like obviously
Yeah.
like a very adolescent like
For sure.
kind of time
Which
period
is,
of our
it's
lives.
cool. They're pulling him. They've made like Shikamaru a main character in like the following anime with Baruto as well.
Mhm.
He's Naruto's right hand man.
Yeah, he's like the
and
second.
his
Yeah.
son is Baruto's best friend, and he has the same sort of blasé attitude towards everything. And I appreciate that massively. And it's only recently that he's like, you know what? I actually think I want to be pretty strong and beat my dad and da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, like
Yeah, there's that like hidden fire, which is like
yeah.
Yeah,
it's really interesting to see a character like come out with that rather than just having like a like I want to be the best at taijutsu.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like that's cool and like that's a cool thing to watch
That's
happen.
one type of person.
But like exactly like if all of the characters are like that, it becomes really different. But like he's a different take on like
Yeah.
having.
Yeah, the laziness, it's
Having, like, a thing,
it
yeah.
is a thing. It's so funny. Like people will sometimes argue that some of those characters have really basic traits.
Yeah.
But just that's what you need. It's like no, you mix this one with that one, and then you
That's
see
perfect.
where you get with that.
Absolutely.
So, what would be yours to start us off?
I'm gonna be that basic person because I am, but it's weird because like for me, anime it really started off like I was a kid. I was watching like 4Kids TV, like Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, all that. But it was so funny because like one day I was literally in the store. Like I don't know, as a kid I used to live in a military base, so we really didn't have like Walmart or Target or all
Right.
those stores. We had like a limited section to DVD. But I went to it's called the BX, and I went in and there was this one movie called Spirited Away. So it's like it really started with me with anime with Studio Ghibli films because it's like growing up in the military, it's like you don't get that like wide range of friends. You don't get to like go out. You're just like you're in one spot. 2 years, 3 years,
Oh.
you move on. So
you
it's
know,
like
that makes sense that she would identify with Spirited Away, it being sort of like a lost, sort of like
Yeah,
isolated
it makes a lot
young
of sense.
female
Chihiro,
character.
she like is my heart because I'm like, being a small child in like this big world and you like have like a like strict family and like you don't really understand so much and you're always like scared of the world. Like it's like, oh, this is this or this is that. And you're just like, my parents are right, the world's bad, and then like she's scared of everything, but then like you kind of have to like. It's kind of like why I love Slice of Life more than like anything else. So like, sure, I love like Dragon Ball. I love like all the punch. I love JoJo, but it's like I reflect more with Slice of Life because it's like
Right,
you get to learn more with
you
like
can identify
with
like
the
more
Yeah,
characters.
it is
Yeah.
the ultimate sort of connection.
I think it's interesting that you chose like a movie too, because I think that was kind of like one of the things you were talking about. Like Naruto's the first anime that you were able to like get your like kind of hands around and be like, oh, okay, I incorporate all this. I think for a lot of people, the reason Studio Ghibli movies become such a like fixation point for like how they like interact with anime is because like it's like, oh, it's a 2-hour movie. I can get this like whole thing
Yeah.
and I can like appreciate the whole story.
It's a very American thing too.
Yeah,
yeah.
For movies to impact you more than necessarily.
Well, like our
series.
television over here, a huge majority of our television is so episodic that like you don't need to know the overarching story
Right.
Yeah.
to The Simpsons or like anything
Yeah.
like that. you
Family
know,
Guy
like-
or all that.
Yeah, or like
Ugh.
even like what sitcom? What were the sitcoms that were big when we were like kids? Like,
Friends.
yeah, like Friends.
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
need to know
Friends,
anything
Seinfeld,
about
all
what
that.
like is
You
going
can
on
just-
in Friends or Seinfeld to just
Yeah.
The
sit down and watch
every
episode.
performance by those characters
is enough to just get
is enough.
you
Like,
rolling,
oh, that's
you know.
who it is. They're all
But
defined.
Frasier, that's like a show I'll admit that I like.
Oh, Frasier is
I
great,
did like
okay.
I did
Frasier's
like
so
Friends
good.
when I was a kid.
But like I think so like as like just a consumer of like anime wasn't as easy to get to when we
Yeah.
were kids too.
Yeah.
Like
So a movie with that, it was more.
a movie
it was
makes
more
a lot of sense for a
condensed.
lot of people.
Because it's
Absolutely.
interesting, because like for me, I grew up loving Disney, and like a lot of people, like when I went to Japan, a lot of people on the base, they're like, "Oh, Hayao Miyazaki, he's really like a Japanese Walt Disney."
Right.
But I will say, with his stories, it's like the story, like the plot, everything is so like
It's a story.
Yeah.
I
not a-
said the word. It's on the tip of my tongue. damn, what is it?
You identify.
You identify,
okay.
yeah. You identify with the
It's a
character. You
story,
understand the story. The scenery's phenomenal. The music's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
all put in and
It's a
put a present
character.
to
Yeah,
you.
Not,
it's a
not
character.
everybody
Yeah.
dreams of being a princess. Like,
Well, it's like you don't have to get
those
saved by a prince or anything.
Those
yeah.
stories are about pieces going through a play. I mean, Disney stories
Yeah.
are about very. They don't. There's not a lot of character growth in Disney
Yeah.
stories
No.
specifically.
I think specifically with the Disney storytelling model too, there's just a lot of like, they're telling you you're this character versus something like a Miyazaki film where you're kind of like, I'm seeing the pieces of me that are in this character. I'm not this
Right.
character, but like
Yeah.
I
we
see
share
it,
things
yeah.
together.
Which I think
yeah.
is a very good example of like Western culture to Eastern
Yeah,
culture.
Western, Eastern culture.
yeah,
specifically.
different
Yeah.
dynamic, but yeah, that hooked you for sure. And that's it.
And
That
I still
is-
love it. To
I mean,
this
to
day.
be
All
fair,
of them.
Spirited Away is kind of like a touchstone movie in general. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
very good film.
Yeah, it's the first Miyazaki I ever saw.
Yeah,
That's true
most
for a lot of
people.
people.
Yeah. So it has. It's understandable. I mean, yeah, and all of his other movies are great. Obviously.
True.
They're pretty good. They're okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
So,
Colton.
Speaking of like Miyazaki movies that are garbage.
Yeah.
Oh,
um,
Jesus.
So I'm
Oh,
so
yes.
what I'm going to talk about is Lupin the Third, Episode 0, First Contact. I only bring up Miyazaki because his like first Ghibli film was Castle of Cagliostro,
Which is hilarious.
which I
It's
find
really
just to be
fun.
pretty trash. Like,
it's real bad.
it's not like it's not bad as far as like an anime film goes.
It's
I
just-
just think
it's a
compared
good
to other
time.
compared to other Lupin the Third content, I think it's one of the weakest, and that's why I'm always
Yeah.
confused about.
He
like,
was.
it
he
gets
was
so much credit.
Clearly,
yeah.
he was clearly flexing on that one because then he did Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
literally a scene in Castle Cagliostro
Yeah.
that's just that same scene.
Yeah,
he was
it's-
practicing.
it's animation.
He's
And
practicing.
also, like,
yeah.
you got to ride on the coattails of how popular Lupin was.
sure.
It's established.
Good
Whatever.
stuff.
Anyway, Lupin the Third, Episode 0, First Contact. So, like, Lupin the Third is really old. It came out in the 1970s with the Green Jacket series, and, like, the episode that, like, starts is really old. Like, he's driving, like, an F1 car while, like, Fujiko is getting, like, torture groped. But, like, it's, like, the weirdest
That's the
70s anime
70s.
torture grope. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, like, it's, like, yeah, she's, like, tied up to a table and, like, half naked. But they have, like, the hand, like, the robot hands that, like, come out.
Yeah.
And they've got, like, this goofiest, like, Mickey Mouse gloves.
Yeah.
And, like, and not, like, creepy, but, like, just goofy as shit. Like, they look like back scratcher. But, like, Episode 0 was, like, more like my first contact. And that's where, like, in the 2000s, they went back and they were just like, we're going to tell the origin story of the Lupin the Third gang and, like, just do it really well. And, like, it just made me fall in love with the
Right.
group so much. Like,
that is such a touchstone for a group series in general.
Yeah,
I mean, One Piece is literally Zoro is just supposed to be.
just Giga, Giga, and, like, and
Yeah.
then, Lupin is obviously Monkey D. Luffy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Monkey Punch is even, like, part of the inspiration for him being called
Mhm.
Monkey D. Luffy, like, other than also just monkeys. But,
Yeah. And they look similar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
they
like,
really look
I think
similar.
it was just the first ones that, like, I don't know, for anime, for me, has always been really about context, about, like, when did this come out, like, what did this mean, and Lupin the Third is one of the most, like, I don't want to say pedigree, because I don't mean it in kind of, like, a condescending way, I just mean,
Yeah.
with, like, anime, a lot of times, like, a series gets kind of, like, one go, and then that story is told and that's over,
Right.
but Lupin the Third has been one of the few ones that has existed since the 70s, and they're still making, like, episodes today.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's existed in so many different forms that to see kind of like a 2000s my era time like retelling of like
Yeah.
how this gang got together.
They
and
had a
who
lot-
all these
they had a lot to
characters
work
are,
with.
Was really good, yeah. And you get a lot of your classic anime things like they have the samurai like who cuts a lightning bolt in half and like
Yeah.
bullets and all that kind of stuff. It's really funny. The music
Oh
is
yeah, it's very.
ungodly good.
People,
It's
people
all,
talk about Cowboy Bebop like
Yeah,
that's
good.
the first thing.
Also, Cowboy Bebop is an absolute, just complete ripoff of Lupin the Third.
Yeah.
Which, like, I'm
Visually-
okay with, but I just hate when people are like, yeah, Cowboy Bebop's so good. I'm like, yeah, Lupin the Third is, like, the OG, though. And like, that goes back down to context with me, though. Like,
I will say I had like a heated argument when I was in Japan. My Japanese teacher,
no.
he was obsessed with Lupin the Third. He literally had figurines all over in the classroom. And I love Bebop, Cowboy Bebop back then. And I was just like, man, Cowboy Bebop's better than Lupin. I literally got detention because I had a fight with him.
you had a good sensei.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. Everyone.
Oh, man.
Oh, my
No,
sensei.
and again that goes back to context for me, because something, like, as influential as Cowboy Bebop is based on Lupin the Third, I'm all that more drawn into Lupin
Right.
the Third.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You're aware of the history, and that's
Yeah.
a lot of what I hit with Fist of the North Star when I saw the movie.
Yeah.
I was aware of what this meant. You know,
Exactly,
I was aware
yeah.
of how influential it was. But the actual first anime that I sat down and watched, since we're starting to talk about those, specifically, it would be Hellsing. And I remember the best part about that to me is that anime was always sort of seen from my context. I was like 12 or 11 when I started watching it. It was on late at night. It was on Adult Swim, that sort of thing. So I had my FMA and my Inuyasha and stuff like that. Sometimes had blood and stuff, and I was like, oh, what?
But it's pretty tame.
Yeah, it's tame stuff. And then Hellsing is just, oh my god, the thing about Hellsing is amazing music too. My brother's a musician, that's why he was all about it. But very specifically is style.
Yeah.
Hellsing is a very...
Oh, there's very little plot.
No, yeah, it's not, it's about the experience of how sort of this ridiculous concept is fleshing out.
Yeah, this incredibly, like, sadistic, like, phallus-wielding, bloody vampire.
Yeah, that's made out of abstract...
It's a teenager's wet dream, like, all over.
Yeah.
I had
Teenage boy's wet dream.
I had the biggest crush on Ceres Victoria, man. Like, I was slamming my
She's
head.
literally designed to...
Yes, exactly. It was...
Yeah, no, it is chemically, like...
addicting.
It's like a formula.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I hadn't really experienced before. Basically, somebody tailoring content for me.
Yeah.
I mean, we're used to stuff when we're younger that's like, oh, this is clearly for my age group or this or that.
I was broad brushed into this group.
Exactly, but then something like this was like, oh no, if you're an edgelord, like this is cocaine, and it really was. And the first series that they did was compact, it was tight. They made it's very much like the first FMA where they made up an ending for it, because the manga, there's only like 3 manga or something, at that time. So they fleshed out what they could and had its own little thing. I loved the style, I loved the aggressiveness of it, and it really just taught me the potential that this animated content could have. I watched other stuff and I was able to gauge, oh, this is tame, because I know that there can be something at this level.
Yeah, true. It gives you a lot of, I don't want to say context, but like 100 times.
But limits.
But it gives you, you kind of like a range of like what the atmosphere is like between different things.
Right. You know that you can go deeper. Like that's always been the best thing about anime and manga for me. It's like, oh no, you can go deeper. There's a comic that's drawn specifically for you, and some of them got serious. Like it's indulgence, and to see that indulgence be like propped up through animation and sort of held together.
Like, this got to be taken to this level. It's inspiring, honestly.
I mean that's part of the reason I write comics. Is
exactly. That's what I was getting to.
The idea that this could even happen in the first place. It's exciting. It's great because obviously something like Hellsing is flawed and indulgent. Like a lot of anime, like Fist of the North Star.
Yeah, it's interesting that like the two you've said so far are very much like you got a piece of that world, because like you were saying, like Hellsing didn't end its anime.
Oh yeah.
The Fist of the North Star was just like a movie that felt like a larger story. So it's interesting that like that's what she's like.
Oh yeah, just a wet bite or like of meat, and that was definitely enough to keep me salivating forever. Mostly, I just wanted to see Ceres Victoria for another episode or two. But
What about you, Ashley, for a second?
Well, for me, something that like, if we're gonna talk about like what was tailor-made for me, I'm definitely gonna go with Your Lie in April.
Oh, yeah.
It was probably the second slice of life anime I'd ever watched, and me being like a musically inclined person, and I grew up dancing ballet, danced with like major ballet companies when I was younger. It's all classical music, and like one of the craziest things that I learned recently about the anime is that all of the music online, like from the original composer, which God forgive me, I don't remember who it is, but it says it in the anime. Yeah. There's a lot of different composers and a lot of different pieces they use, but the original music you can't find online because Your Lie in April basically like pretty much bought all the rights to it and then produced their own music.
Oh, got you. So it's like that.
So it's their adaptation of it, which it's not an adaptation. It's to the book. Yeah, it's their performance of it. And what was crazy to me is it's all about violin and piano, like
beautiful.
And it's just it's amazing, and it's just about this kid who kind of like lost his way with music and physically can't hear it anymore through trauma. And for me, just like going through just like my own personal trauma, like everyone does, and like losing your way with the arts, because I don't dance anymore. It was like, oh my gosh, this just like grabbed me by the throat and just slammed me. And it was just so powerful. I cried every single episode, and I listened to the music in my car, and it's just 12-minute long pieces of just violin and piano music and you can
compositions.
Yeah, you can physically hear them just like powering through the notes. And after I watched it, I was like, wait a minute. Those were real people playing that music.
Right.
Yes.
And
There are people behind that.
Exactly.
Like,
and I was like,
scenes.
there are people behind the scenes. There are people that created this. And that's what made me just like dive into the creation of anime.
Gotcha.
And I was like, this is tailor-made for me. Where can I find more content like this? And then I found other things like Silver Spoon and different things along the lines of that. Where I was like, oh, the slice of life anime can also be along the lines of this. And I do forever will love shonen anime as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But then it like introduced me to more like Food Wars and things like that
Right,
as well.
yeah.
So it like
It's
started
amazing.
me down that path of like there's more to anime than Naruto.
Like,
Yeah.
it has more to offer you.
And
than-
that is, oh my god, that is so important that
Yeah.
happened to you, because you see, you meet people who, I knew somebody who, they watched FMA, but they couldn't see anything else. Like, they watched something else like, this is
Yeah.
stupid, like, it's not FMA. Like, they get
Yeah.
stuck, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad
That's
that you
true.
found
And I
that.
think that happens with a lot of people with Ghibli movies too. Like,
Yeah.
they'll see the movie and it's like, that was something I can get my arms around, but everything else seems kind of insurmountable.
unwieldy.
Exactly.
Unwieldy.
Yeah, like the
Is a
first
good word.
Ghibli movie I saw was Spirited Away, and then I saw House Moving Castle, and I only saw like half of it, and I was like,
Yeah.
For some reason I just wasn't in the mood to watch it.
Right.
And then I like went back and watched other Ghibli movies, and then ventured on into other like really like almost indie anime movies,
Especially
and
for
was
over
like,
here.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Yeah, at that
And I was
time,
like,
for
wow,
sure.
so there's more, like, and then I was like, oh, there's more than just Studio Ghibli. There's these other, like, anime
Yeah.
movies that are like Studio Ghibli. It's
One of the
crazy.
interesting like kind of parallels I see between like what you said with Hellsing and like You're Not Lying in
Yeah.
April is, of what I've seen of Your Lie in April, I remember one of the things that they do that I found super indulgent was like they will just let a piece of music play
Yes.
and like they'll just be like, nothing, we're just playing the music now, and then it's
Yep.
animated to it too, but it's like,
Like,
no, you're like in the way that like You're on Ice is like, no, you're gonna watch this performance, like
Yeah.
that's what this anime is right now.
It is.
Your Lie in April does the same thing. It's like, no, you're watching this or you're listening to this like
Yeah.
performance, and like it just makes you do that.
Take a
And
sip.
Yeah,
it's
I'm literally,
indulgent.
I'm getting
Take a listen.
chills like thinking about it
Exactly.
because you sit there and you're watching this 24-minute episode and you have a 12-minute interval
Exactly.
of just this
Pure
these
music.
two
Just
people
music,
on
yeah.
stage
crescendos.
making this music, and one of them is going through this existential crisis. This other one is also going through an existential crisis that the other one doesn't know
But they're
about.
talking
And-
to each other.
Yeah, they're
through the
talking
music.
to each
Through the
other
music.
literally through the music, and he's trying so hard to do it, and she's trying so hard to encourage, and it literally just full on
You
chokes
are
me
just-
out.
yeah.
Like, it's so good,
That's the
and you
thing.
feel it. Like I remember afterwards, like just being able to listen to the music, I could just like hear the dialogue,
Right.
and you're like, oh,
It linked you
Which
so
is
well.
even more like like quantifiable in the sense that this is a piece of Japanese media that like is
Yeah.
transcending language for you
Yeah.
to like
It's
understand.
Well, music is beautiful
Crazy.
like that, and it's so funny that you say that because I get the same concept that you're trying to explain about the chills and things like that with the fighting and the violence and the
Yeah.
thrashing. I mean,
Yeah,
for me,
absolutely.
that just always really is how I identified things, and that's what was exciting, and that's
Yeah.
what I mean. Thinking about these characters putting their lives on the line for what they want, experiencing pain physically and stuff like that, and pushing forward. And it's the same kind of concept
Absolutely.
where like musically you can comprehend that because that just speaks to your background.
you know, for sure.
Jesus, y'all make it sound like so personal. With me, it's
Yeah,
like,
you know.
like again, basic anime watcher. It's like I've fallen in love with like that like high school like romance and like comedy relief anime.
That
It's
is
like
important.
Basic AF, Fruit Basket. That was like the
Hey,
first
hey,
read.
that is. I've
Like
heard
Fruit
a lot about that
Basket,
one.
School Rumble, or in High School Club, like all that good. It's just like I don't
It's a
know.
release.
It's a release. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like with dealing with like so much stress and seriousness as a kid. It's like this isn't fun. And then like when I watch shows like these, it's just like, oh, this is kind of funny. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's these characters who are going through like the same exact thing that you're doing. Like, oh, I'm going through life. I'm going through school,
Yeah.
dealing with friends, dealing with parents. But it's like a comic relief. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I can breathe. I can relax. Like I understand what's going on with them. I can relate to them.
Right.
But I can enjoy it at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
True, yeah, no, and that's that like that ability to turn it on like radio and just like let it like wash over you is huge part of why I think a lot of us find like anime to be so seductive in the sense that it's therapeutic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because like to speak to that, I mean, you're moving around a lot, so
Every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, so the idea that you would be in a class with people that you knew
since you were a kid,
which
which blows me away that you guys knew each other like forever, and I'm just like, I know no one
exactly,
anymore.
and that's the thing. You didn't necessarily have that, so this was your therapy. It was like, wow, like that can happen, and you're part of this family now. But like,
you guys can make me cry.
Yeah, that's the goal here.
Real life
emotion.
anime.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, do not ever underestimate the power of high school drama.
I love high school drama. I love slice of life.
You can't.
It's just so good. Like that's why like My Love Story is literally my favorite anime. It's cute, it's
pretty
funny,
strong.
and it's so strong. I love those characters so
it's
much.
very romanced.
Yeah.
Like it's a romanced concept of what every teenager goes through in some concept in modern day.
Right, yeah.
Or wants to go through.
Again, we're talking about a lot of like what we watched, at adolescence, because we're
Yeah.
talking about like how it's shaped our identity.
It's just so funny because everyone's just like, oh my god, I love Twilight. I'm like, oh my god, Fruit Basket, guys.
Exactly.
It was such a weird
That was the
child.
real thing.
It's all right.
So you've got one that
So the next one I
I've
wanted to
seen.
talk about is Vision of Escaflowne, which is
some esoteric ass
kind
shit.
of like it strangely made its way to like I never had cable as a kid, so Toonami never saw anything.
But that was like a
on
Blockbuster, right?
No, like Vision of Escaflowne, it somehow made it to like the public like airwave TV.
No way.
And I was able to
Really?
watch
What?
like all of it. Yeah, like like Fox or something like that.
I didn't know it would be there.
And like that's the thing. It was one of the few anime. It's a 26 episode anime only series. So I ended up being able to like actually watch the whole thing.
Nice.
And it's it's like it's got that like fusion of schizotech like anime, but also fantasy. And like to me, I barely knew what anime was at the time. So for me, it was just like, oh, this is a Japanese like fantasy like cartoon. But it just like to speak to like how Fist of the North Star felt like a larger world. Like Escaflowne is like a whole self-contained story, but like the way that Hitomi is just like teleported into this fantasy world for like a short period of time and then returns to like the real world, it feels like such an escape that like obviously I really identified with like, oh, she like got to have this huge adventure kind of like outside of her like normal life, and then she's like returned, and like obviously escapism wise like that's an incredibly seductive like story. Like
welcome to life.
And on top of that, they have like the way the male characters are like it's so gay, it's so gay. It's so like like Vaughn isn't like like a muscular kind of like shonen hero, but he's a shonen character and he's kind of scrappy and like has all this responsibility, but he like really kind of blows it off in a very like American protagonist like way.
Oh, okay. Very cocky.
And then like the main character technically is Hitomi, who's like taking all this in, is reacting like with like her kind of feminine energy to like everything. There's like a pretty boy like prince. There's a really sadistic like like that whiny like I don't know, Jack Spicer type of like character, like where he's like really like he's a
Did you just Shaolin Showdown?
Yeah. Like I feel like that was one of the best like whiny evil guys, and like Landau in Visions of Escaflowne is that exact kind of like really like strangely androgynous.
Oh, I know I'm evil.
Yeah, exactly. Strangely androgynous, sadistic like episode, and then his brother who's like super edgelord emo, and like there's the whole thing, but like at the end of the day like. All of those pieces get shoved really hard together, and it's a very different story from a like, yes, the white male protagonist had to save the day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, everybody had to bend fucking over backwards to get this stupid ass kid to like do his job. Like,
very.
Which I think just like really undermined everything I knew about like the hero's journey that we get taught like by Disney movies and Hollywood media. It's like, no, do you know how much it takes to support like that happening? Like,
It's
was
crazy.
really good.
That was probably really eye-opening.
Animation-wise, it's really
no, it's classic.
Superb too.
Yeah, it's classic.
The music is superb.
Did they
when
do
they
a
do the
movie?
movie. They did do a movie.
I watched the
movie,
which
most people is what they've seen.
I saw the movie.
Yeah, they edge it up. They make it a lot more violent, a lot more bloody.
Hell yeah.
And the music is way better.
Yeah. Well, that's what you gotta have.
All right, final round.
Yeah, I mean, like this is talk about basic Akira.
It's good though.
It's so good.
It's unrelenting in its admission of it being art. Like I remember watching some, probably some, some history of anime as told by some YouTuber in like 2002 or something. But like they were talking about how like no, after that, after Akira, anime was considered like art in Japan, which is false. It was always considered art. Right. Better sensibilities over there.
Like
but
it
that
is unequivocally a masterpiece of art. Not even of like,
for sure.
not even
And
a film, not
that's
even
the
of
thing.
like animation.
I took that in. I was watching this. I'm like, oh no, I understand completely. This is an adaptation. I was I'm like, oh no, like there's a political thing going on. We don't know a ton about it. It's actually really interesting to get this synthesized sort of like vignette into that one. That one, see how they link up.
Again, you're getting hot bites.
Exactly.
Like you were saying
But
before.
the power in some of the, scenes. There are just straight up scenes in that film that are powerful, and you can't. The body language, the actual physical animation, seeing a young, enraged boy psychically, kinetically blast a typhoon through, like, the 2020 Olympics. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And, it has a very. I remember the fight between the brothers with the laser and stuff like that. That was so great for me, like that sort of like combat, because it was fair, but he didn't win, that sort of concept. But then the ending was it was perfect for me because it was not the typical ending I was expecting for a movie like that.
Yeah, like I remember watching it the first time. It felt like such a middle finger at me because I was like, this isn't how stories work.
Yeah, exactly.
You're doing it wrong. Like,
yeah,
exactly.
no. So the ending was like, wow, I'm not supposed to get it.
Exactly.
It's challenging, and I respect, and the fact that they chose an ending that was abstract, the fact that they didn't make a simplified ending for the movie, and the fact they spent 10 years drawing it, and to this day looks better than pretty much almost anything else as far as hand-drawn, because the amount of commitment...
It's a masterpiece. It is.
Exactly.
It's never going to be brought down by anything else that comes
Exactly.
out.
Sure.
It was forever
standalone.
stand as what it is.
Yeah, and that just really inspired me as an artist to a level that I hadn't experienced before. And I was 14, it's like, it was, it was perfect.
For sure. Absolutely. For me, like, the first full series that I ever watched after Naruto was Gurren Lagann.
Oh, don't hate me. I haven't finished it.
Oh my god.
Oof.
Like, because
There's reasons for that.
after Naruto, I was severely depressed. It had ended.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I even read like the manga, and
Wasn't enough.
I was just like, I was itching for something more, and I
You're in
was
your sponge phase.
exactly. So I was like, I need something, and I was like, I need something that's like Naruto that's gonna make me fall in love with it. And everyone was like, maybe Bleach, and I was like, nah,
No.
maybe
Man.
not. Like, I'm
not.
liking Bleach.
Lol.
So, like, I got recommended to watch Gurren Lagann, and I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. I have a 1-year-old running around my house. Let's go for it. And I sat down and just powered through it.
And it blew you away.
And it
like,
absolutely blew my mind.
Cosmic.
Yeah,
I'm
1000%.
right there with you. Gurren Lagann is a master. To me,
it is.
As a
like,
series.
to me, it is a masterpiece on Akira's level for me. Like, it's never
Yeah.
going to be knocked down. It's never going to be diminished. Like,
Yeah. I
completely
never
agree with you.
I never
Like,
thought there was going to be another anime that made me feel in the way that Naruto did. And in the first few episodes,
That's why
I was
can't
like,
finish
oh
it because of the
my
feels.
God.
Yeah.
It was so deep, and it was so complex,
Yeah.
and there was just so
But
much
it was the
involved.
driving simplicity of it. I mean, when
Yeah.
Kamina says, oi,
Everything about
oi,
it
oi,
makes sense.
like right at the
Yeah.
start, that's when I'm like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it perfectly communicates everything. Even as a series we've talked about many times before, I'm sure at some point I'll have to do like a whole Gurren Lagann thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like, one of the beautiful things they do is they like lull you like with a couple episodes that seem like they don't matter
Yeah.
into that sense of like, oh, this is just a regular anime, and then like 2 episodes later you're like, this changes everything
Yep.
about my being as
Yep,
a person.
literally.
Yeah.
And like
Literally.
being able to do that, I think, not only demonstrates like how skillful like Trigger was at the time, but how powerful anime is. Just period. Like that.
Yeah.
Like art can affect you in such like a visceral, emotional,
Yeah.
identifiable, psychological way.
Yes.
I felt.
And I had
similarly.
seen like bits and pieces of Kill la Kill because I was living with people that were watching Kill la Kill like as it was coming out, and at that time I was just like, I'm just watching this because I'm here, and then I eventually went back and watched
Yeah,
Kill la
you
Kill,
did
like
the deed.
not an awful person.
Yeah.
But then I was told, I was like, oh, it's from the same creators of Kill la
Yes.
Kill, and I was like, okay, cool. Let me just go back and let me just see see if this is worth anything.
Same directors who did Fooly Cooley.
Yep.
Like
Fooly
they're a group of people. They're
Yeah, they're
powerful
good
artists.
people. Good
Very
They're
people.
powerful
Good
artists that
They're good people.
touch our soul.
Experimental artists for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, for me that was just like it tied it all together.
Yeah.
I had my initial, I had my this is who I am, and then I was like, oh, there's more.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, it kind of ties into with Studio Ghibli, with like the story, the imagery, the animation, and the music, and then it kind of goes to like the comic relief of like high school drama and romance. There's this one anime that I totally forgot that I fell in love with. This is actually the first anime I saw when I lived in Japan.
Oh boy.
It was called Clannad, I believe. It's
Clannad.
Clannad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same. It's like there's those few episodes where it's like the comic relief, where it's like, oh, they're just a bunch of high school students. Like what the fuck's that one boy's name? The blonde hair. He's always getting like beaten with the girl with like the gray hair. It's so funny. But it's like the story between like the two students. I forget their names, but it's like the kind of the love story between them. But then like after seeing like the whole story of the first season, then moving on to after story, that's where I kind of got introduced to feels in anime.
Yeah.
It's like I never really like felt anything. It's like with like the with Studio Ghibli, I kind of like was related to the characters, but then with like the high school dramas, I was like, oh, it's funny, haha, comic relief. But then with this, it's like, no, I feel for these characters. Like when whoever never seen it, sorry, spoilers, when one of the characters dies and the character has to like kind of go through life after he graduates and just like go through this whole becoming an adult and like living without his significant other. That's like for a child who is like a teenager and just like thinking ahead in the future is like, how do you it's like, how do you do this? Like, I feel for this character, I'm fear for myself, like that could happen to me. So it's like that was a huge introjection of like, oh my god, anime is not just like the story, not just like the animation, but it's her feelings too. Well, I kind of just like put the bow on the top.
That tragedy is a concept that is explored by it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like with regular cartoons, you don't really see like tragedies.
Of course,
it's
because
just like
they're
haha,
meant to
it's
be
funny.
digested.
Entertainment. That's
they're
it.
meant to,
Yeah, no. So like it being something that like poses as like like a cartoon, we would think of like taking that route is just very kind of like, again, kind of like going like it's like, oh, this can affect me.
Yeah.
This can change me as a human being.
Like has all
I can
kinds
grow
of
from
implications.
this.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which I think obviously anybody who likes anime, like I think becomes addicted to. Like,
Yeah, for sure. It's a stepping
ability.
stone for a lot of people. There's so much involved in it that it literally creates a better like view on things sometimes.
Well, it's psychological imprint of like possibility, and I wouldn't say hope because it's not necessarily inspiring, but more just awareness of
just of things,
just of self, of ability to change, of different angles, and of different sort of like when I went to Europe when I was 12 and we walked. I mean, even that I come back home and I'm just like, oh yeah, it's just perspective.
Yeah.
And that's
which
really
slowly builds your whole being.
And then it being an anime cartoon that laser your focus is great, but like you've got the.
So Mike, my last one I'm gonna end kind of a little bunch of is Gantz.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I actually before I read Gantz, I actually saw most of the anime.
Oh really?
And I was just spellbound. So Gantz is about his kids die, and they get teleported into a room after death, and they have to go basically hunt aliens. And there's a lot of fucked up like alien sadism going on.
Oh yeah.
But the thing that like just blew me away by it was the antagonist Kei Kurono. And most of the other people are just shitty people.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They do a really good thing. It's an inherently Japanese thing that I found later as I went to film school and everything, but like their insight into like the human psyche of how we all act just kind of like regular people.
Yeah.
And how they portray that is so different from how like in America, like we want to portray everybody in our media as like the best of like what people can be. But like in this they were just so much more just realistic about like, so like the way Kei and his friend die is a homeless person falls in on the subway tracks and like can't get himself up, and they're literally just sitting there and they do his inner dialogue and he's like, and like before he like the homeless guy like walked up to him and been like, you have money, he's like, oh, get away from me, you dirty like homeless person. And you think like in like a very Western storyteller, then the guy will fall and he'll like show his heroic side by like rescuing like reluctantly. But no, he's just like, I don't want to fucking like get down there. I can get hurt. And stuff. But his friend like
real actual emotion.
And his friend like is like sees him over there and like he's like, oh shit, it's that guy. Like I barely remember the guy. I hope he doesn't talk to me.
Right.
And he comes over and he's like, hey, we need to help this guy. And his friend is like that kind of upstanding kind of citizen.
Yeah.
And they just get killed for it. Like, obviously.
Yeah.
Like,
he can't deny the social cost
of like him getting guilted into it. So he kind of does it really reluctantly. And he dies, and so he gets, put in against. But, like, throughout the entire kind of animation, which only goes up to, like, so many episodes, 25 episodes, and like
the episodes
like
where he's crappy.
Yeah, the episodes where he's really crappy. Yeah, and so like you just get to see him like kind of go through this whole like he's like a high schooler.
Well, he's like he's like a mean, dumb, horny like
15-year-old
boy
guy. But it's so real to me. Like the way like they introduce another character, they introduce like a female character too who like becomes really dependent on him like really early on because the way she got teleported was she committed suicide, so she can't like go back home.
Yeah.
And so he like really takes advantage of her, like having to live with him and stuff. And it's actually kept way cleaner than like you think it would go. But like he tries to take advantage, and she's like, "No, that's shitty." And
the line
he feels bad about it.
The line is like,
"I'm not fuck your pets."
Yeah, it's like I'm not a dog.
He's like, "Well, since you're staying in my house and like like I'm being like feeding you and stuff, you're like my pet, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, I guess I am kind of like your pet." And it's like, "So you want to like get in bed with me?" And he's like, "No, you don't fuck your pets."
It's beautiful.
And because
he needs that.
But that's the thing. He's just a shitty, horny guy. But like, it feels very genuine and very relatable to a sense where you can finally see like a piece of media that like is indulgent and it's like, no, this is a shitty guy.
Yeah, and I mean that has always been one of my favorite parts about sort of anime in general is that they will address that archetype.
Yeah.
Like you're saying in American media, they'll do that a lot. They'll show these perfect, and the villain is always the villain, and the hero is always the hero. They won't ever talk about the weird people or the perverted people, but they exist. You have to be aware of how to act against them, and they have to know they can change.
And he has a whole, again, like he does change. He does gain self-confidence and kind of like self-respect in a way, and gets like a girlfriend for a short period of time who they both respect each other like
there's
and it's healthy.
Thanks.
But like it's
everybody has that stage.
It was just like one of the first anime. It's in that hyper-violent kind of indulgent sort of thing, but it also like was like. No, like, again, we can go in this direction where we really just let ourselves...
The flexibility.
Exactly.
It spoke to the huge flexibility that this medium is always going to have, and it just seems so archaic sometimes to look at the limitations that American media will put on itself.
Right, and we even celebrate, like, a lot of the things that go on over here, but, like, again, like you said, they're just not afraid to address it because it becomes more kind of like an art form where they can just be like, hey, like one story guy can just sit down and be like, this is the story we're telling, and like enough people watch it to pay for it. We don't need to like run it through this Hollywood system of like lowest common denominator like wins every argument. Like kind
because
of thing.
The goal of it isn't necessarily to make money; it's to appease the people that already enjoy it.
Yeah, it needs to just make enough money.
Exactly. Yeah. No one wants to break the bank. Well,
but that's us, guys. We've bared our souls to you. How about in the comments, you guys let us know about some of the anime that affected you in your life
and how.
Yeah, and definitely throw a like on this video if you liked it.
Nice.
Dislike it if you didn't like it. Let us know. We gotta know.
Sorry.
And get your friends subscribed. Stay subscribed if you're here for the first time, and we will catch you next time.